Hi, listeners. Today we have a very special guest on our follow-up music episode from somebody who actually knows about the music industry and actually knows a good bit. We did an entire music episode 2 weeks ago, but I failed to realize that I have a longtime friend, someone I've known since high school, who is very experienced in music promotion. And her name is Rachael Iverson of J&R Adventures.
Hello,
hello, Rachael. Now, Rachael, your big act is Joe Bonamassa, who's
Correct.
like the biggest thing in the blues scene, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so tell me. First thing I want to do before we go into the backstory of how you single-handedly made Joe Bonamassa the biggest thing in the blues scene is you listened to our episode from 2 weeks ago. Go ahead and tell us what we were wrong about when we were just like throwing things at the wall to see what we could come up with.
And it's not fair to just say the whole episode.
No, it could be fair. No, I'm just joking. No, it was a great episode. It was really interesting to listen to it from almost like an outsider's marketing perspective, not being in the industry per se. First, we got to talk about the John Mayer stuff because, of course, you've got your fans of John Mayer and you're not fans of John Mayer, but you guys were like,
oh, no, Matt is a John Mayer fan.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, sort of, right? I kind of wasn't for a while, and then this album kind of all right, John Mayer, putting some stuff out there that I might be kind of interested in listening to again. So it made me reconsider John Mayer.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, I have to lay this out. John Mayer is one of the best guitarists that there are out there. And unfortunately, in our industry, I mean, he is such a great guitarist, but he focuses on his amazing songwriting, his amazing voice. So you don't necessarily always hear his guitar playing in his pop records.
And to be fair, that one I actually know. So I've listened to John Mayer Trio and some of his guitar stuff, some of his blues stuff. So that I 100% agree on.
But I mean, it's his bread and butter, right? No one makes money, especially in the blues. So he's got to make money with his pop records. I totally don't fault him for that.
So what were we wrong about John Mayer?
Yeah, so you were wrong about his albums. You said this was his first album in 15 years that topped the charts. And I'm like, that doesn't sound very right. So I actually went into my Billboard Pro account and I looked, and the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 records going back to 2003, he was either number 1 or number 2 on the top 200 chart. So even though you might not have heard the marketing and was influxed with all this information on social media.
But did he have any singles on those? Any top 40 radio singles?
Well, so that's different. When you're talking about the Billboard charts, the top
John,
200 is an album chart.
We are sorry, John. Our sincere apologies.
Yeah, but I mean, that just goes to show you he probably doesn't need a ton of crazy ass marketing to be able to sell his records because he was hitting number 1 or number 2, whether you knew he released a record or not, which these days I have to say, obviously, the charts are a little wonky. You used to have to sell millions of records to hit number 1. These days, it's 20,000, 30,000 records if you're lucky. So we can even talk about the chart, how it's changed so much
Well, hit us with the next thing we are wrong about. What else were we wrong about?
Okay, so let's see. You were also wrong
You've got notes.
I did. I took my notes. Actually, there were a few things you were correct about when you're talking about vinyl. Vinyl is huge right now. I mean, it has increased 30% just in the last year. And in 2020, it was the first time in 34 years it beat out CDs.
Oh, wow.
So vinyl is exploding right now. And it's not just the audiophiles. I think there is, people that are just interested in the whole culture of vinyl, the music, from the 70s, and they love that type of playing music on a turntable.
I would imagine that's probably a big merch item for you guys at shows too, right? That's a great piece for autographs and just a really cool item to take home with you after you've had that live show experience.
Yeah, vinyl is great. Honestly, vinyl's expensive though. So if you don't have a lot of money, like for example, our tickets at Joe's show go anywhere from like $60 to $250 a ticket. So if you spent $250 a ticket, do you want to spend, another $40 on a vinyl or $35 on a vinyl, or do you want to spend it on a $15 CD? It's up to the people. It's their own preferences. But vinyl is king right now. And one thing you guys will find interesting, the supply and the demand and what's going on with the COVID structure and everything else, it's affecting vinyl in such a negative way. If you wanted to manufacture a vinyl right now, you would have to wait between 6 and like 8 months to get your vinyl done. So people are buying up vinyl even more now because they know it can't get it.
We should be opening like a vinyl pressing facility.
If you did, you would make lots of money. But it's also a very antiquated system, right? So it's the machines that they used back in the, 70s and 60s. And it's a very hard process to make vinyl. And that's why it costs so much money. But anyway, so the vinyl stuff you talked about was awesome. I really liked when you talked about Dolby Atmos. We can talk about that more in this episode because that's really important for the future.
So let's start. Let's go real fast. Tell us how Joe Bonamassa went from selling tickets to 100 people in small clubs to selling out venues like Red Rocks. And tell us specifically about the business model that you've helped create around him that allowed that to happen and has allowed you to really become a case study in the music industry.
Absolutely. Okay, first, I have to dig on you a little bit, Joey, because I've known you for so long. In your last episode, you said Merc and not merch.
You 100% did, dude.
That tweaked me so bad.
By the way, every time I say that, I know it's wrong, but we had that argument like literally 20 years ago, and you were right. But in order to be spiteful, I keep saying the same thing over and over again.
It's so wrong, and it just cringed me. I had to dig you on that.
If you notice, I said it correctly.
Everybody else says correctly. I say it.
Yes, you did. Yep, and it did sound very spiteful. So, anyways, well, let's talk about basically Joe Bonamassa. We're a very homegrown roots type of act. And how he started out is he originally did have a major record deal 20 years ago. What happens when an artist gets a record deal, you basically are owned by them. You have to do everything that they want. You don't get paid a lot, and they can drop you at any moment. And that's what happened with Joe. He was dropped like it was hot. And it put a damper on his whole view of the world. He's been playing guitar since he was 4. And when he was 12, he opened up for B.B. King. So he was already in the industry since he was 12. And so he was around 20 years old, in his early 20s, when he got dropped by his record label. Him and his manager, who's my boss and CEO, Roy Wiseman, they decided to create our company, J&R Adventures, and said, we're going to try to do everything ourselves because no one cares about us. They all care about themselves. And if we don't care for ourselves, then no one else will. So that's when this thing grew and started. So Joe started out playing and just woodshedding and touring and doing the hard work you need to do to gain fans, right? Back then, there wasn't social media yet. He was just going out and touring. When social media started popping up, that actually was a huge factor in Joe's career. When people started recording his tours, his live playing, because he's an incredible guitar player, one of the best in the world. When they were recording it and they played it on YouTube, people were shocked. Like, they had no idea this guy even existed. They couldn't believe they didn't know who he was. And that's when Joe started to grow. I would say that was about 10 years ago, 7 years ago, somewhere around there. So from there, what we did as a company, we decided, because we're vertically integrated, again, we promote all of Joe's tours. What that means is we go and rent the venues ourselves. We set up the box offices. We pay for all the production. We pay for all the marketing ourselves. We have to have a lot of capital to cover that stuff, but it works out in the end for us. And then that also means we release all of his own records, and we do all of the marketing ourselves and all the branding ourselves, and we sell all of our own merchandise. So all of that together has been able to grow year after year because we're in charge of every piece of it. And there's not other people involved like management or agents or promoters that can take that 10%, 15%, 20% of what you're making just for literally being there and saying that they're experts in what they do, but they're just treating you like a cookie cutter artist. They just want you in and out and kind of take their money and go. So we didn't like that. We took everything over ourselves. And that's when this really started to grow, is when we took over everything ourselves and started promoting our own tours.
And I don't think the average fan of Joe or any other artist for that matter understands the level of intensity that goes into planning something like that, or how easy it is to just let somebody else take over all of the management of it and give up, like you said, that 10% or that 15% and just, pay up and let somebody else do it for you. Right. So it's very tempting to just give it away. So to take on the mammoth task of doing it all in house, I think a lot of, kind of casual fans maybe either make the assumption that, all artists just have this like back office operation that just like comes together and forms for them naturally and easily, or that like, of course it makes sense that like artists are just going to give up, 30 to 40% of all the money they make to a fleet of people. And like that's just fine.
And that's how it's always been done too,
right.
Though. You have to realize that we're rebels in this industry.
Yeah. And that's
that is just how it works.
Sure a lot of people understand.
Yeah, no, I think Joe's fans, because they're the crazy super fans. They know his career. They know everything about Joe.
They understand why. Yeah,
they understand, how much work does go into it, and that he has his own company, and they actually love Joe for that, because it's like Joe against the man, like it's the underdog story. People love that. But definitely you're right. It's very hard for your standard independent artist to say, I'm going to do this all myself. Where do I start? And it's very difficult. And it takes time. It takes time, and it takes resources, and it takes people learning how to do it and knowing how to do it, and then just doing it. And most people don't have the capital to be able to do it. And that's why it's such a big risk, but it usually has a huge reward on the end if you stick in it. You may not make, I could say my boss, Joe and Roy, they didn't make money for a good 5 years, at least, any money.
So yeah,
because all the money that came in went to the company.
Yeah, let's talk about that. How do you get the capital, right? Because it's not like Joe had it when he started, right? I mean, he was a struggling artist, I assume, just like most other artists at the very beginning. So I mean, how do you get the capital? How do you resist the temptation to go buy cars or buy properties or whatever artists do when they get that first big check, and instead put it into building your infrastructure?
Very true. So it is a lot of self-control. You have to bet. What Joe always likes to say is you have to bet on yourself. So what you're doing is you're taking all that time, all that money, anything that does come in. So if you're playing a tour, you take that money and you save it and you put it into the company. You don't pay yourself. You take just enough to pay for just living expenses and those type of things. And you take the rest of the money and you put it into the company. So other ways to get money. I know in the early days, we had to get bank loans. Simply put, when we were working on one of Joe's biggest milestones.
When you treat it like a business, that's probably a lot easier than if you're just an artist out there that's like, hey, I'd like a loan, right? Like when you've actually treated your operation like a business, that's probably a much easier thing to do.
And that's what a lot of musicians don't realize, is that it is the music business. The second word in that term is more important sometimes than the creative music part that the artists focus on. And if they're going to grow, they have to realize it is a business. Don't take it personally. There's certain things you have to do. Sometimes you can't make money to be able to let the business grow. And those that stick it out, again, usually the reward outweighs the risk.
Yeah, and you can't make shitty music and have a good business and be successful at the end of the day, but you can't make great music and have a shitty business and be successful at the end of the day either. Like we've seen, plenty of behind the musics that have played that story out for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. It definitely helps, I will say, to have a really good product that people love. And again, you're betting on yourself. If you know your product is good and you are not just putting it out there to make money, you're doing it for the love of the music as well as getting it to the fans, people are going to see that. They always see through your intention. So when Joe plays on stage and he gives it everything he has, even though it might have been a terrible live night, It doesn't matter. The fans saw the passion. They saw the live struggle that he had on stage. They love it. They eat it
My
up.
guess is there's not a lot of terrible live nights that are happening these days on his tours.
Well, I mean, that's the funny thing. You ask Joe and he'll be like, oh, we sucked last night. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? It sounded great.
Yeah.
So it's different. But honestly, the fans right now, I mean, we can even go into how COVID affected the music industry and destroyed us for 2 years. But really, people are starving for that live interaction, the live music. The whole live stream era, we can call it that, was a means to an end. Like, it literally was there because that is all that was available for fans to consume and enjoy their favorite bands. But it almost doesn't have a place in the world now in a normal stance. It could be a once in a while type thing, but no one wants to do live streams. I know a lot of artists that are like, okay, I'm done with that. We just need to get out on the road and play for people live, because that is what people are just dying for.
Yeah. Is there anything that was useful from a, technical or a marketing perspective from COVID, like going forward? I mean, is there,
I would say,
I don't want to call it positive, but was like there anything useful from it?
There definitely was some useful stuff. I will say that it made us as a company kind of upgrade everything. So we had to upgrade our audio visual department, and we had to upgrade our music videos, and we had to upgrade everything that we did, that we presented to the fans, had to get upgraded, like better video, better audio, better everything. And, during that time period when Joe couldn't tour for almost a year and a half, it was, we literally started other things. Like Joe has his own podcast and he interviews other musicians, and we do all these other things now because in that time we needed to fill that time.
You still had to create content.
Well, I mean, what's interesting about that is you went from being having a relatively modest content shop to probably a very intense content shop. So post-COVID, what you end up with is the ability to produce high-end stuff.
Correct. And it kind
you
of
have
set
a big
us up
audience, right? Like, what did you tell me your email and Facebook list sizes were? They were big.
Oh, yeah. We've got 1.2 million email database of our direct marketing. And we've also got 3.2 million fans on Facebook. That is our bread and butter, because our fans are a little on the older side. I would say like 40 plus. So they're on Facebook. We also have like 500,000 fans on Instagram, or 750K on Instagram, and 500,000 on Twitter. So Joe is doing those things. I would say social media is very important, and especially during COVID was very important. So we had to focus more on that, more interaction of Joe talking with the plans, playing for the fans on social media. That helped us grow. But you guys have to realize, now that things are going back to normal and there are tours coming back in, it's like we added all these new elements, but now we have all the old stuff coming back. So we're like strapped for resources, and we're an independent company. We have about 15 people that work here, but during COVID, there was only like 2 of us in the office. So it was just, we all had to survive and do as much as we could. We actually focused, you guys would think this is interesting, we focused more on our merchandise during that time as well. And we pounded out brand new merchandise every week for the fans, because again, they had no other content.
Sitting at home, online shopping. I mean, that makes a huge amount of sense.
Yeah. And that helped us through the really tough time of not having any tours.
So I mean, I've noticed even some of the biggest acts in the country touring wise right now. So like Dave Matthews Band, who's back on the road. I think they played, I saw one of our friends was at the Gorge last weekend. But they, still have a very substantial live streaming product for their fans that, aren't comfortable coming to a live show, but are still, very much engaged in their touring schedule. And, I don't know what they sell individual shows or a subscription to that streaming product at, but it's a pretty substantial investment that they've got going into a multi-camera, live streaming experience for their fans at different stops along the tour now.
Yeah, we did that. We did a very high quality 4K live stream shoot that was actually live stream with a TV truck and everything to do simultaneous switching and everything. And that, I will say, is not cheap. It is very expensive. And as cool as it is, it is something. Like I said, it will always live. It'll always be here. Now that we've done live streams, it'll always exist. And it is there for something, but it won't replace live shows, which is good to hear for musicians. Because as you guys know, that's where musicians make their money, is on tours, not by selling records. That is a bygone era. So people need to tour. They need to sell tickets. That is how they make money. So it is a good thing that people still want to see live shows, because that helps the musicians pay for stuff.
I mean, one thing that it did bring out, whether the pandemic or however you want to categorize it, that I think is nice is now that, you guys had to make some investments from an equipment standpoint. We back in the spring built out an entirely new video facility that's on the other side of this wall. That has live streaming capabilities, a lot of the stuff that you talked about, 4K streaming. We put some permanent fixtures into our studio, green screens, all that kind of stuff, specifically for a lot of those same purposes. But I think one of the interesting things about your case is, even when life returns to normal, whatever normal may be, it still gives you the ability to not be dependent on media networks as much, right? So when you guys want to stream a show, now at least you don't need ABC or NBC or Fox or somebody to have to partner with you to live stream a show on television or broadcast or whatever. It's much easier to get that live stream product directly out to fans, right? You've had to figure that out on the scramble in a much more uncomfortable process. So when you want to do it the way you want to do it now, it's going to be a much better product. You're not as dependent on legacy corporations the way that you would have been, 2 or 3 years ago.
For sure. And that's actually the indie way of thinking too. We've always thought we cannot rely on radio airplay, because that doesn't exist for blues or blues rock music. And we cannot rely on TV stations to play us, because again, Joe is not a mainstream pop or rap artist. So we always relied on what was available to us. And in the early days, it was YouTube. That was our TV. YouTube was our TV. And we spent a lot of money on getting Joe's music videos and live videos out on YouTube. Now the other social media platforms like Facebook just started a premium video type of service, let's call it, for artists that can submit their actual real official music videos. And those now videos that you submit to Facebook and can get millions of views on, those actually count toward Billboard charting these days. So a lot has changed in the industry, but I would say relying on what's available to the artist without having to rely on the big corporations, like you said, you're not going to get that unless you're with a major label. And who has major label deals these days? Most of people are independent artists.
Well, the same way that building out a studio allows you to kind of break off the TV station, it allows you as an artist to break away from the label, or to break away from, separate agents or managers or whatever that, costly like infrastructure is that kind of swarms you as an artist once you start to get attention or become successful in the industry. And I'm not saying that infrastructure is always bad, right? Sometimes it helps people get discovered that never would have been discovered, right? It doesn't always have to be negative, but
correct, yeah.
In the case of you guys, you found a way to do it a much better way that has created a really long-lasting and what seems to be really intimate relationship with your fans as a result.
Rachel, where are things going? We talked a little bit pre-show about the new spatial sound stuff with Adobe.
Yes.
Like what's going to happen with the what's coming in the near future for, song and album distribution, sound, and how does that impact your marketing?
Yeah, so I would say right now, the future of music is shifting to what they call spatial audio. And think of spatial audio. One of the brands is Dolby Atmos. And you've heard of this for movies. And it's like movies have Dolby Atmos, and you get this spatial sound that's all around you that you can experience being inside of the sound of the movies. Well, they are creating that for music now. And it's a process that the producer in the studio has to do while they're making the record. So it's not necessarily easy process, but it's something that now,
it's not just like a filter they throw on afterwards.
Correct. No, it literally is like, think of it having speakers like around you and above you, and they're like all over the place. And so what they do, what's going on is Apple is putting all of their money into this basket. I mean, they are going full force into the Dolby Atmos. What this is going to do, it's going to replace their HD format that they currently have now called MFIT. And it is literally just going there. That's what they're going to offer as their HD platform is Dolby Atmos. So now they're hoping that more and more people get their subscription, because this will be part of people's Apple subscriptions. The Dolby Atmos sound and files will be a part of like your normal subscription. They're not going to charge any more for it. That's not the plan. I think they want to, like, it's because so many people are buying vinyl and they're getting the high fidelity type of music. How can digital services, fight against that or try to get some of that market share back? This is how they're going toward a higher quality digital sound.
So that's interesting. The tech companies are having to fight against an analog trend.
Yes, it's so true. But you ask any audiophile what they'd rather listen to, and they will hands down say, I would rather listen to a vinyl, because you're going to get the best sound out of the music versus a compressed MP3 or even a WAV file. It doesn't matter if it says it's lossless, it's always compressed in some way, and you're not getting the full sound. So that's what Dolby Atmos will be. It will be this spatial sound where it makes you feel like, even if you have like headphones on, your earpods in, you're going to be able to feel the sound around you. And I think it's a new experience for people to listen to music.
I think sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So I think too, part of, I think it's 80% sound quality for vinyl, but I think at least 20% of it is the experience for people. And I think depending on your age, it's sometimes nostalgia, or it's if you're younger, maybe it's kind of a lust for nostalgia in a case where maybe you didn't even like experience that time period. What we've talked about that in some previous episodes, where you kind of long for days even though you didn't grow up in them.
Correct. Yeah.
But with vinyl, I think that people just enjoy the experience that goes with it. And that's what they've done with Dolby Atmos and with spatial audio, is create an experience that goes with the sound, much like there's an experience that goes with, listening to a piece of vinyl. And I think even if you look at something like the AirPods Max, right? Like, they don't look like a lot of the other more modern headphones on the market. They're still Apple sleek and modern, but they have a very kind of retro style to them that looks like something you could be listening to a piece of vinyl in, a 70s living room on. And maybe they looked like, something in the 70s that was futuristic, but they could still, fit in a 70s living room if they needed to.
Yeah. No, I think that's the future of music now. Again, it's would I say it was a money grab? They're just trying to figure out how to reach more people, to get them to get subscriptions to their platform. And I think people will really enjoy. Will there be people that don't care? Yes, there's going to definitely be people that don't care about the high quality digital music. But at the same time, you're going to get a group of people that absolutely have to have it. And they have to have this type of audio, or else they don't. It's almost like, I would say maybe it's going to be like this. Remember, have you guys like watched an actual DVD in the last 5 years?
No.
Okay, because if you look at,
but not a DVD.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you go to Blu-ray and you watch the Blu-ray, which, with the, the surround sound and the 4K type of Blu-ray, and then you go back to a DVD and you watch that and you're like, wow, how did I ever look at that? I'm telling you, that's how the discrepancy of the quality is. And I think audio will be like this too. You're going to hear this Dolby Atmos, this spatial audio, and you're going to say, I can't go back to listening to music the way I did before because it's so immersive and it like swallows you whole.
What is that?
I already noticed it. I started listening to songs from 3 or 4 years ago that some artists haven't bothered to like go back and, you know, up convert to, you know, lossless or even Apple Digital Masters or whatever. And you know, maybe there's a little bit of placebo effect, but like I can hear a difference, right? It's lower fidelity, like especially when, you know, you go to something like a BTS song where like they've spent time to convert it into every possible Apple format that exists, and it just you know, pops in your ear. Like there is a noticeable difference if you go listen to something from 3 or 4 years ago that is just kind of sat there.
Well, here's my question on that. Does it increase the cost of production? One. And does the increased cost of production actually result in more stuff being sold?
I don't know the
That's
answer
the
to
question.
The second one. Yeah, I definitely don't know the answer to the second one.
I think in the beginning it will not. I think that it's going to take people a long time to jump into this. But like I said, Apple is putting all of their marketing dollars and all of their efforts into promoting this new platform. I think that it will get to a place where it becomes more normal, just like with all new technology. But in the beginning, I don't think it's going to make a difference in the amount of money, especially the artist makes. I think it's going to take a long time for that, but it's a step in a direction that will change music going forward. You know what I mean?
How much does it increase the cost of production? Like what percentage?
I don't know exactly, but I do know, like, just from my own experience with our producer, he had to literally retrofit his studio with like 2 or 4 more speakers in the walls and the ceilings in order to mix music properly to match that spatial kind of sound. So he had to upgrade, which I don't even know how much it cost him, but I would definitely say in the tens of thousands, if not more than that, to even upgrade your system. And then when you're doing the work on it, it takes longer because you have so many more channels to have to mix between so many more spatial points. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a labor intensive thing, but it's also a technology thing. So not everyone is doing this right now. I would say, like you said, like BTS and a lot of the big names are going to be doing this because they're on top of it. We're doing it because our producer believes in it and he has his studio set up for it. So even though Joe Bonamassa is not the biggest name, we're going to have one of the first Dolby Atmos.
Yeah, it makes a huge
records.
amount of sense that your audience would be super into that with, you know, him being as talented a guitar player as he is. I mean, it makes sense to me that you guys probably have a producer that is super into finding that solution.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Hey guys, if you want to talk about something else that you kind of went on a
tangent
hole on, last time on your marketing podcast about music, I was laughing so hard when you guys started going into, this is what you need to do when you need to market let's say you have a new record coming out in February. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And I was just laughing my ass off. Because what got me first is, yes, when you're thinking from a marketing straight, like when you're in a marketing company, there's there's a lot of rules and there's a lot of different ways you can go about things, but usually there's a template. And one of those things you said was focus groups. You got to do focus groups. You got to ask the fans. And I was just laughing so hard because I'm like, we wouldn't, we do listen to what the fans say and we look at their comments and stuff, but the artist won't necessarily say, okay, we need to go ask our fans what they're thinking of. Like
the talent never cooperates.
Correct. Yeah. But remember, in our case, the talent is also he owns the company. Correct. So he directs how his creative vision is. And it's almost like, I hate to say this, Joe does have a Midas touch where between him, his manager, and his producer, we're able to create new content every single year or two. We release more product than like anyone in the industry, but we release so much product and people just eat it up. And it's because we do something different, but it's still core to the fans. Well, and we don't have to ask the fans what they want because we already know who they are and what they want.
This actually goes to a thing we were discussing on the last podcast, which is this like 2-year album release cycle makes 0 sense in internet world. like probably the smarter thing to do is be putting out like a song, every few weeks or a track every few weeks, and then compile that into an album every year, every 6 months.
So that is what a lot of artists are doing, especially in the major label side. They do release singles before. And I will say what we've done to kind of, when streaming came into the world, it changed music forever, obviously. So what we've had to do is pivot and say, okay, instead of streaming taking away the money we're making on physical CDs, we're going to kind of join them, not beat them. So we started marketing people and promoting streaming and getting our fans to join over to like Spotify and start listening to Joe's music on Spotify. So if you look at Joe, he's got millions and millions of listens on his songs. And that's because we're really trying to groom our audiences to listen to Joe all the time, to his back catalog, but more importantly to new music. And so when you were laying out your structure of how you'd market a new record, actually what we do is we've been, because of the way Spotify works and all streaming platforms works, it's algorithm based, right? So what you have to do is you have to almost play a game with the algorithm. And that's why you release singles before an album comes out. So you want to release a single and have at least 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks to let that single ruminate and get the algorithms to start pushing people to it. Mm-hmm. Then you release another single. And it kind of compounds with the algorithm sending people, so it'll keep on growing and growing and growing. And then another 4 weeks passes, and then you release the album.
For what order the singles come out in?
So, I mean, it is personal preference, but what we do is we basically, want to release the most exciting, best songs on the record first to get people's attention. And maybe what is also indicative of the rest of the album. You don't want to put out some random rogue song that doesn't sound like anything else. Sure. So we'll choose a song. It's going to be exciting. It's got to be upbeat. And for the first single, just to grab their attention. Like for our Joe's new album coming out in October, his first single was like a very strict rock track, and it had some blues elements, but it was way more rock, and it was very exciting. So we released that first, and then the second track we released was more of a blues fun rock shuffle type of thing. So we released that one next. And then honestly, we're just trying to it's all about the game of the algorithms. You got to get the algorithms to pick you up, and there's no other way to do it. You can't go pay Spotify or sleep with someone to get your music played out there more. You've got to just do the hard work and release.
I thought that's how the entertainment industry worked.
It's not the 80s anymore.
It used to. It used to. I'm like, man, who do I have to pay to get this played? So, it doesn't work like that.
I'm going to have to bail a little early on us, but Matt's going to keep going a few more minutes with you. But I have one last question.
Sure.
About which component of your marketing plan right now over the last, say, 6 months have you seen be the most effective in terms of driving traffic and driving interest?
I will say what is most important when you're trying to promote an album, and this sounds kind of cliche, but it is, believe it or not, it is the music videos. You have to have a very compelling, exciting music video that then you can use that and put money behind it and get to your fans on social media and on YouTube and everywhere else. And they will see it. It's a visual thing, right? But it's also, you're getting the music. So I know with us, if we do not have a good music video, it's not going to get viral. It is not going to get the streams we want. Music videos are so important. And again, it sounds like, well, that's how they used to do it. Yes, it's true. People spend millions of dollars on music videos. You don't need to do that, but you do need to have some content that is visually and audio based, that you can get out to the fans, that you can promote the album. And then that goes into promoting pre-sales of the album. And then that will lead to on sales and everything else, and charting positions and all. It all is a snowball effect from there. Mm-hmm. So it is important to have the right content to get to your audience.
And that's something that Matt pointed out about that move with Santana and Rob Thomas, launched without a video.
Yeah, they had a lyric video.
Oh, they had a lyric, but not an actual video.
No, I mean, not a music video. No, they just had a scrolling lyric video.
So the lyric videos are the music industry or the record label's way of kind of testing the waters to see how the song does without spending a ton of money, you know. And then if it gets some kind of jump or interest, then they'll go ahead and spend the $1 million or, you know, a couple $100,000 on a music video. But that's kind of like the trick is, hey, let's see if if anything, that's your focus group. Like you put your music out there with music videos or lyric videos. If it pops, then you know to spend more money or promote those certain tracks.
And that makes sense as a concept. This one just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, specifically because of what it was, what they were trying to do. Like, I just don't understand how they didn't have the music video that looked pretty similar to Smooth from 20 years ago, like ready to go. And yeah,
I mean, it's funny. It's sometimes the answer is as simple as, hey, we couldn't get them to shoot it. Like we didn't have the time, or COVID affected it and we couldn't get to. It sounds so boring, but like everyone thinks
that's the
music
answer
industry
to
is
stuff around
like
here all the time too. So I mean, it makes perfect sense that that's what the answer could be. It's like, you know, Carlos Santana like had to be somewhere else because he was doing something else, so like he couldn't go shoot a music video. It just seems like such a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you're going to go out, why waste that opportunity and the fans that you're going to reach if you don't have the right content to get that kind of pushed? Again, it's about the algorithm. So if you don't have the right content, those algorithms won't pick it up. They won't pass it to the fans and it won't become viral. So yeah, no, I agree. I think you've got to work on that. But again, life happens, stuff happens. And as glamorous as the music industry sounds, it really is kind of boring and, like you said, statistical and but it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a great industry and it never is the same. It's always growing, it's always changing, rules are changing, pivots have to happen, and that's what we've been doing the last 2 years because of COVID.
Anything else we were completely wrong about that the listeners need to know about?
Well, we talked about the artist not being like to be micromanaged with the whole marketing team taking over. That definitely is a thing. I would say.
You mean they wouldn't just take my recommendation straight out of the box and be like, hell yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do that.
Well, sometimes those who have major record deals, they have no choice in the matter.
Sure.
They have to follow those rules and follow the marketing suits and everything. But
then
you know,
they're just
another
resentful of it, I'm assuming.
A lot of artists can be, correct. And it is a very dog world. You know, it's very cutthroat in the music industry, but there's also a room for everyone because of the internet. And because even artists that don't have any label, they can put up their own music on Spotify these days. You don't need a distributor. So you can get your music out there on YouTube or on, you know, Spotify and still sell thousands or even just have millions of streams because of how the internet works, which is a beautiful thing, but it also creates so much content that fans it's almost too much content. You know, it's overload. It's music overload. It's like so much to look at. And there's so many incredible artists you've never heard of, but they're out there and they're trying to put their music out there.
Yeah.
I would say that you guys, when you're talking about the CD stores, and Joey was joking about Sam Goody, I'm like, one of the few, by the way, physical retailers are few and far between, but there are still a few out there that sell CDs or even vinyls. FYE are still in malls today that you can go. But I would say a majority, you know, even Barnes & Noble still sells CDs and vinyls.
Okay.
Best Buy does not anymore. They took out all their music product. But Amazon is king when you're talking about physical. Vinyl. Yes, you're right. Yep. So because they're selling books, they're selling physical product, it makes sense to sell the physical CD or DVDs to have those in there, the vinyls. But honestly, like I said, Amazon is king when it comes to selling physical product digitally. Mm-hmm. So you go online, you're going to get Amazon Prime. They'll guarantee you to get the brand new album on street date or a day before. Why not order it?
Yeah.
You know, what we do is, again, because we're an independent label, we sell our own merchandise. We have a pre-order up for Joe Bonamassa now, and we sell Joe's pre-order on our store as a CD, and we undercut Amazon just a slight bit by price.
Yep.
because we have to make up for the free shipping, right? So we do sell on our store, but we also let Amazon sell as many records as they want. And we kind of live in harmony, as you can say, and try to just still make the money where we can on physical product. Because for our demographic, again, it's a little bit of an older demographic. They still want that, like you said, that nostalgia of holding the CD booklet in the hand and turning the pages, or even holding the vinyl, feeling the grooves. It's a very almost like a spiritual experience, those people that love music,
like settling down into
it.
Their favorite chair, right? Like getting their favorite drink and like settling down. Like that's a whole experience for people when they listen to music.
Correct. Yes. And that still exists today. It's not all about streaming. There are people that do want that experience.
Correct.
Yeah.
Best artist out there from a content perspective, like who's putting the best kind of content that isn't Joe, obviously.
That's a tough one. I mean, when you have unlimited resources and you can do whatever you want, I mean, think of like a Taylor Swift, or she's putting out, documentaries on Netflix, and she's got music videos out galore, and she can re-release a record that came out 10 years ago however the hell she wants it.
Right,
like,
but give me one that everybody's not gonna know, right? Give me one that like is putting cool content out there, but like everybody hasn't found because it's the Taylor Swift documentary on Netflix. Give me one that because you're in the music industry.
Sure. So in my realm, again, this is like the blues rock, the roots realm. I would look at, this is a little shameless plug for them, but I do love them. It's a band called Larkin Poe. They took to heart kind of our advice about, hey, I would say they're more of like think of like a female Black Keys. They've got that roots rock with the blues influence, and it's very catchy, and they play guitar and they sing, and they're incredible. They're a sister duo. Look them up, but they have specifically worked really hard on doing social media videos, live stream videos, creating brand new content, doing podcasts. I mean, those girls are working their asses off to get new content out to their fans, and that's how they're growing their fan base. And I don't think they have as big of a fan base as Joe, but they're still in the beginning stages of growing, and that's how independent artists need to do it in order to grow in this vertical direction. So they're great. They're some incredible talented musicians that are just doing everything they can for their fans. And the great thing with them is they've got young people and they've got the old people, because it's that type of music that transcends.
Perfect. That's exactly what we were looking for.
Yes. I mean, there are so many talented musicians out there. It is so hard to just pick out names, but go on YouTube, go on Spotify, look at your music release radar, see what type of stuff is being shoved in your face, because sometimes you'll discover new music, and the discovery itself is even more awesome than like, it's that different experience when you discover new music and you're like, I've never heard this person, I can't believe it. That's a different experience, and that's almost addictive.
Couldn't have it summed up any better way. Any final thoughts on the music industry that we missed, or that all of the Of Record fans should know before we close?
I would say that it takes a lot of work. There's a lot of resources involved. There's a lot of, people working on these things. So as a Let's Music fan, when you guys listen to music or buy music, just realize that there's definitely a lot of work put into it, and a lot of passion and a lot of love, not only from the musician themselves, but also from everyone behind the scenes. So go spend money on music and buy tickets and support the artists, because again, artists are not making real money on streaming. They're making it on their physical product and on their touring,
on doing things,
on experiences. So if you love an artist, go support them, because they need it more than ever these days, because again, most people haven't been touring for over a year and a half.
Yep. Absolutely. Does J&R have a tour schedule or an album release or anything exciting coming up that you want to plug to our audience before we go?
Yeah, sure. If you want to learn about Joe Bonamassa, again, he's an incredible blues rock guitarist. We've got a brand new album coming out October 29th called Time Clocks, and we are currently pre-ordering it everywhere, every retailer, and on our store at jbonamassa.com. And take a peek at it. We're always trying to get new Joe fans. And again, Joe is not an old timer. He's only in his 40s, but he transcends that age gap as well because he's such an incredible guitar player.
Awesome. Well, this was an awesome episode. I really appreciate you taking the time to follow up with us and coming prepared with notes.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. And I love digging on Joey. Again, I've known him for half my life.
Yeah, no, we all do. This was great. It was super helpful. I think the audience is really going to enjoy the follow up on the topics. The music industry is really fascinating to me personally. So this was really enjoyable. But as always, listeners, viewers, if you enjoyed today's episode, jump in your favorite podcast app of choice or on YouTube below and leave us a rating and review. Helps more people discover the show, and that makes us happy, and we like to be happy. We'll be back next week with the latest. Thanks for joining us.